5 years ago, we didn't have that at all. We looked before we went, took our best guess, looked out the window, looked at the radar, dealt with the route, and listened to where the other guys are going. So having that is incredible.
Yeah, and what we would do in the past is we're always talking to air traffic control. So the way we would get it, if I took off out of Phoenix here, how long are the sectors? Maybe time-wise, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
So about every 20 minutes in your course of flight, you're being handed off to another air traffic controller who's in a room. He might be sitting right next to the guy that you were just talking to, but they've got different geography in space. So there's a whole bunch of sectors all the way across there. So 20 minutes at 6 miles a minute, that's about 120, 150 miles. So every 150 miles, I can get reports through that controller I'm talking to. If somebody out there, for turbulence, for example, if there's somebody out there ahead of me going the same route, he'll call back and get a PI rep. But we always went through kind of like the teacher, which is the air traffic controller. But now you can see in real time, you've got your own display there. And I'm sure the controllers like it because, you know, the worst times for us and the controllers is when there's a bunch of crap weather out there, and and everybody's trying to talk and get, you know, where's the best ride, where's the smoothest ride, all that. So now we can kind of get a heads up much further out, and it's really convenient. And it's a better ride for you all. People ask me, do you like turbulence? Does it bother you? Well, it startles me just like it would you if we hit some clear air turbulence. You know, where you're minding your own business and all of a sudden it feels like the bottom drops out. I know you've never had that experience, but if you had, it would have startled you like it does me. So I might get startled even more than you. I mean, if I'm sitting there on the verge of falling asleep, it might really rock my cage. But I'm going to go up, my level of arousal or anxiety is going to go up, and then it's going to come off or drop down rather rapidly because I've done that many, many times before, same as Eric. But yours goes up there, and what happens? It gets stuck up there. And so, okay.
Does anybody know when turbulence occurs? When we want to eat. When we want to eat, that's when it happens. And the last picture I put on the diagram is I slid the altitude down to 29,000 feet because we usually feel like we're going to get better ride higher, and that's generally true. But if you remember how many yellow spots were up high, there's much fewer down low. We would get a better ride if we had fuel for that lower altitude.
Yeah.
I'll let you do it.
Okay. So here, you want to take this back, and we'll put that there.
And then we'll do the old water thing if we want.
And if it works, that'd be even greater. Hi, I am Ron Nielsen, and I started this 32 years ago, last month actually, and it was a total fluke. A friend of mine ran the Employee Assistance Program at America West Airlines at the time, and he had a psychologist in town that had started a program, actually started it with me, and he was looking for a pilot, so this friend of mine said, hey, you want to go talk to some people who are afraid to fly? And I said, sure. I had no idea that first night, and I know I'm getting choked up. I don't mind tearing in front of everybody, I just can't talk. So it really moved me because I thought you all were maybe a little nervous, you know, and just needed a little bit of courage, and you know, but no, people were really freaked out. And I spent the first 2 hours that night, and I've been doing it ever since. It's the most fulfilling and rewarding thing I do, and it's fun when you get a lot of people like this to show up here. So anyway, and then over the years, I have had friends like Eric who have made the mistake of saying, hey, what is that you do down there when you talk to these people? And Eric came up at least 15 years ago, we can't remember when, and I said, don't come unless you're willing to get hooked, because it is really addictive to help people and talk to people like that, especially when it's something that comes so easily for us. So that's my story. Eric, how long ago did you want to be a pilot? Was it a dream growing up, or?
No, it's a very weird story. My dad thought I should take flying lessons. He thought it'd be good for my self-confidence and it'd be something to do.
Yeah.
And I figured out later, years later, that my flight instructor was really a poor instructor, but I didn't want to bag out of it and disappoint him. So I went through and kept going. I haven't heard anybody who accidentally kind of did it, but I accidentally
kind of did it.
Kind of kept going.
Yeah.
And I go, well, this is after. I go, well, this is really fun.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an odd
Yeah, and at this level of aviation, it's really kind of the graduate or doctorate level, because you're out there flying really nice equipment usually and getting paid the big bucks. So, and he's getting paid more big bucks than I am because they're making more money now, hand over fist, because all of you people are flying out there. It's amazing to see, just in my career, how much more air traffic there is out there now. So. It's the way to go, obviously. How many of you have a flight coming up in the next 90 days, we'll say? Okay. How many of you are avoiders? You'll do anything to not have to fly. Okay, pretty much the same answer. How many of you fly but are white-knuckled? Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about that, and we'll start out here. I always have way too many slides, and that's good for me, but I'm not going to play this. It's one of those pet apps. That's my dog, and that's another story. I wasn't a dog lover or owner or anything like that, but my next door neighbor did poodle rescue, and so she carried this little guy like a football in the crook of her arm, crossed back and forth to her mom who lived across the street. I made the mistake one day because he was really calm, and little dogs I thought were neurotic and all that. So I walked out there and said, "Hey, what's the matter with that dog, Dana?" She said, "Nothing. Why do you ask?" I said, "Because he's so calm." And so then over the course of the next week, a little more pitching, she said, "You need this dog." I said, "I don't need a dog, don't want a dog." And then one day she said, "Just take him in for the day," and he's never left. So between the two there, that's the smartest one right there. And we go bike riding every day. That's how I read my book.
Everybody.
Oh, sorry. All right, here's a movie with Meg Ryan called French Kiss. It's a little excerpt.
Estimated 7 hours, 20 minutes. Please make sure that your seatbelt is fastened and that your chair back to the main platform. We'll be taking off shortly. We hope you have a pleasant flight.
Écoutez, vous siégez là-bas, côté couloir, là-bas. Voilà, marquez. Vous êtes content? Merde.
Vous avez la claustrophobie.
Au milieu. D'accord.
My first time flying, I'm just kind of nervous. First time. Speak any English? Did your mother ever teach you about staring?
What do you think? The plane is going to crash and we are all on the ground in 1,000 pieces dead? Promise you, if it happens, you won't feel a thing.
You're French, aren't you?
I'm curious, how have you got around your whole life? Or do you just stay in your house with the doors locked?
I get around as nature intended, in a car.
Voyageurs, l'usage des appareils électroniques est interdit durant le décollage d'appareils.
What was that? What did she say? That sounded serious.
The pilot says there is a crack in the engine, but not to worry, take off anyway.
Cellular phones and other electronic devices is forbidden during takeoff.
You know, I don't know what they taught you in France, but rude and interesting are not the same thing.
That was the tug. Starting the pushback.
We're about third in line for takeoff. So just relax. We should be in the air in just a couple of minutes.
Look, I've almost got this dumb cottage going, so could you please stop looking at me?
closing up. How do you do that? Me, I love to fly. Especially this moment. The plane getting ready to charge the runway, the engines screaming, the pressure.
Dieter asked me if you, when Eric is up there, or anybody else to stand closer to them while you're talking. Like
Okay.
if Eric's up there.
Okay.
A place in life where I feel this kind of exhilaration.
Diane, where's that?
Is
No,
that
no,
what?
no, 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 don't tell me.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff.
That one out over the air.
What?
It is not the pain you're afraid of. I know you're afraid. Really? Well, you're afraid of life, you're afraid of love, you're afraid of sex.
Well, that is ridiculous.
I can tell from looking at your face and the way you dress, with your little wet buttons all the way up to here. You're the kind of woman in bed, you're waiting under the covers, the light is going up, and then like a rabbit.
What's the matter with you? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I do. And Charlie never complains. A couple of months where I just didn't feel like it. But that was a long time ago, and I was in between teaching jobs. Yes. And for you to sit there with that smug expression and tell me that I have a problem. Because look at you, you're just so nicotine saturated. I'm sorry to say, hygiene deficient Frenchman.
Fantastic view, huh? Now, if you will excuse me, I must go do as nature intended. Pardon.
So what happened?
He distracted.
You got distracted. Yeah. So that's all you got to do is get some obnoxious Frenchman to sit next to you. And Kevin Klein's probably available. Yeah. So I've had a number of people, including Sue, when she took her first flight after we'd done some coaching, and she said, mysteriously, a Southwest pilot deadheading, which is when we sit in the back and we're traveling to the place where we're going to start our trip, or sometimes pilots will commute from their home to their domicile. A Southwest pilot, she spotted him I believe before you got on board the airplane, right? And she went up and she grabbed him around the throat and said, "You are going to sit next to me." He actually sat behind her, and she said, "Can you sit right here for me?" So one of the things about being human, believe it or not, and routed at the base of all of our anxieties a lot is the need to connect with other human beings. And some of you are naturally introverted, which makes it more difficult. You don't want to reach out. Some of you just don't particularly like the thought of rubbing shoulders with a complete stranger there. But that is one of the things I'm going to recommend highly, is that you engage people around you. And simply, if you never know what to say to somebody, just ask them their name and what the story behind their name is, because everybody's got a story behind their name. And so that is a really valid strategy, is to communicate with other people. And it's an important one, because literally, I've joked with people, if I could fly with you on an airplane, and assuming that you get rather elevated and frightened when you fly, if I pulled a gun and surprised you in the middle of the flight, it would be the last time I ever flew, for sure. But in that moment, if you were convinced that I was going to do harm to you, you would probably not worry about the fear from the airplane. You would be more concerned about that. So it's interesting. It just shows that it is a particular way that we feel unsafe when we're focused on that. So we'll touch on that just a little bit. I want to bring Jeff up here. I had another lady that was going to come tonight, but I don't see her here. Oh, Lori, what am I saying? Oh, jeez, Lori. Hi, Lori. You want to come on up first here? Yeah, this is Lori Vega, and we're going to share the microphone. I've been instructed that I need to stand close I hope my underwear doesn't unravel with this, but anyway. And you went through
Where
the
do you want me to
class
put
here,
this?
you can just hold it just like
Oh,
a regular mic, so,
okay.
yeah. So you went through the class a year ago, a couple years ago?
About a year ago,
Okay,
with my friend, she found the class and said
Yeah.
we would always talk about how afraid we were of flying and
Yeah.
what we would do to cope,
yeah.
and so
We're gonna talk about triggers here tonight, and we're gonna educate the people. So what were some of the triggers that bothered you about flying?
I don't have a problem with being like closed in like
Right,
that
right,
thing.
claustrophobic?
Yeah,
no.
no, not at all. It's all the noises and especially the taking off, and then when the engines cut back, and then
So is it the sensation of being forced back into the seat? Is it that, or is it just all that energy and noise and stuff?
yeah,
Okay.
I worry about the
All
plane.
together.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So something might be falling off.
right.
Okay.
Something might be break. It just I have all kinds. I would have all kinds of scenarios.
Sure.
and
And
so,
those are stories which we're going to touch on that we tell ourselves. Okay? Go ahead.
and like you said, one time I did fly next to somebody that talked the whole time, and it was much better
Yeah,
for me
yeah,
to
yeah.
keep out
If
of
it was
my
me,
mind.
it could be worse, but depending on the conversation. No, it
Yeah.
really is, because it's engaged, and you need to engage that part of your mind. So, yeah, yeah.
And I tried everything. I tried drinking a bunch of alcohol
Mm-hmm.
before, and then I got prescription medication. But I lose a day of whatever I'm doing from either the alcohol or the prescription medication. So I was really motivated to learn to try to overcome it. And I would be really frustrated with myself, like when I'm on the flight, like
Sure.
stop it. Just stop being so afraid. This is ridiculous. But I couldn't talk myself out of
No,
it.
huh.
And so when I came here and I learned more about the mind and how it works and why you can't talk yourself out, or why it's, there's
Yeah.
different ways to do it.
Your best
That helped.
thinking is what got you into trouble.
Yeah,
I used
yeah,
to say, yeah, yeah. And so you came to the class, and then you pretty much took care of your own self, right? How did you? So
Well-
what did you start doing differently?
So I didn't have any flights for a long time.
Okay.
But in June, since the class that I went to, my first flight was in June, and I went to China. And it was 4 flights because I
Yeah,
had to go to
sure.
LA and then switch planes, and I had bought the what do you call the kit?
I call it the Fearless Flight Kit.
the Fearless
But
Flight
the
kit.
harmonizer, which most people talk about, is an audio program in that.
Yeah. I was kind of doubtful. I was like, I don't know. I've tried everything. I mean, I'm an intelligent. I deal with like life and death
One
stuff,
second. Who's tried everything out there? Raise your hand if you've tried everything.
self-help
Okay.
books and
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
And I deal with like life and death things in my job. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a labor and delivery nurse, so there's a lot of stress. I'm fine there, but I couldn't talk myself out of it. So I thought I'll try it. I really was doubtful. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll do it, because I should be doing this. So.
And so I bought that before I went to China, and I listened to it a little bit at home, not a lot. I think I listened to each of the different things once, and then when I got on the plane, I had some noise canceling headphones, which I think helped because I
Yeah.
couldn't hear the noises.
Mhm.
And I did not have one instant of being like with my heart beating. And before that, when I came to this class and there was someone like me up there talking, I was like, yeah, she probably doesn't have it as bad as I do. She's probably just a little bit scared,
How many of you are thinking right now, Lori doesn't know what fear of flying is? Right? Yeah.
My heart would pound, and I don't have this in any other place in my life, but my heart would pound so hard I felt like it was going to pound out of my chest, and sometimes just tears would just kind of roll down, and I'm not a crier, so it was just really anxiety. So I just was really doubtful, but it worked perfectly for me. I still can't believe it, and I haven't flown since. I mean, that was in June. I have a flight in about a week and a half. I'm a little bit nervous because of my whole life I can remember being terrified. I don't ever remember not being terrified, but I know that it worked perfectly for me,
Yeah.
without a flaw.
Yeah.
I think it kept my mind out of those stories that I tell myself. And it was really like a lot of positive things, and then already knowing you, or seeing you in this class and feeling kind of connected. It was like you were talking, like I could put a face with the voice. It wasn't just some random.
I like audio books, and there's a sense of personal relationship with the author, because a lot of times the author will read his own work and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that for me too. And there was a, I forget her name.
Lisa?
Lisa.
Yeah,
Lisa's not here. No. Anyway, so Lisa was telling me, we were doing coaching. I was coaching Lisa, and she said, yeah, Lori's been all over me. She said, you just need to get that harmonizer and get on it and do it. And she was kind of the same way. She said, nah, I don't think it's going to be like that. So she did it, and she flew, right?
Yeah, she said it helped a lot.
Yeah. So that's my big observation over the years is audio seems to help most people, because especially when we'll talk, probably touch on mindfulness just a little bit tonight. And what is mindfulness? Basically paying attention to what's going through your mind. You are what you eat. If that's true, what you think must really say something about a lot of us, because a lot of us are scaring ourselves to death, right? So, so I found over the years that having someone talk to me, and I tried to quiet myself down, which is kind of the introduction to meditation, things like that. It doesn't work for me, because my mind says, oh good, there's no competition now, and it just screams at me. We've got that little voice in there that's constantly talking to us. And so what I found is, and the harmonizer basically was an idea that I got from listening to someone else who had a similar product, and it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. So there's a lot of craziness in there. There's multiple voices talking at the same time. There's sound effects from the back of the cabin. There's a lot of sounds mixed in there artfully. Somebody much smarter than me helped me with that. But I would say that's a tool if you want to get on the next flight with confidence that you're going to be able to manage your anxiety. Nobody's going to get on, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people are going to come through a class or even take our 201, 301 class where we actually go flying afterwards. Very few people are going to have just that kind of a breakthrough. There are some, Lori is more closer to a breakthrough than a lot of the people, but it's a process. But the thing you need really is the confidence that your next flight, you will be able to at least put a lid on the anxiety so it won't run away from you. Okay? How many of you have panic attacks? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty representative as well. And that's what you need. You need, because many people or some people are worried about the airplane and the structural integrity and all that kind of stuff. But most people are afraid of their own fear. You're afraid that you'll lose control, and in this day and age, the consequences to that are frightful. You think of visions of being taken off the airplane in tough cuffs, as if it wasn't bad, you have to be embarrassed. But the one thing I will say is, most of you, your fears are totally unfounded. I mean, 99.9% of you. Even if you had a so-called panic attack, it's miserable on the inside. You may wish death, because that would be a welcome respite from the agony that you're going through. But you are not going to have a heart attack. You're not going to break down. You're not even going to hurt yourself. Because what you don't realize is there's a lot of people out there just like you who are masking it just as well as you are. So that same part of the brain that is having trouble regulating your anxiety at the time, it's still intact, inhibiting you from making a fool out of yourself. It won't let you do that in public. Okay. Anything else? Any words of wisdom to them?
I can't really think of anything. I might have already said that, but that I was frustrated with myself that I couldn't just talk myself out of it. Like, it just seemed really silly, because everybody would, if I brought it out, everybody would say, well, flying is like the safest way. You're in a lot more danger in a car, and logically I knew that, and I was like, I just stopped it, but I couldn't.
It's because it's not a logical problem. It is a bodily function problem. And that's the trouble with it'll come back.
And I would be on the plane and take it off, and I'd look at everybody, and they'd all be asleep. I'd be frustrated. All sleeping.
And it's always worse when your spouse is the one sleeping, right? Well, I'm glad that you
Thank you so much.
You're such a good sport. Jeff, do you want to come? Jeff starts slow. No, he's persistent. And I say you need more persistence than you do anything else. Just to keep coming back, which is what you do.
I started, I think I came to back in 06 one time. And then I started in February of 2017. I came every month. You do nothing, so just one or two a day. And then September of last year, so 18, I flew with it. And since then I had five flights, and I had one set up a couple of years ago. But it's just going back over and over, and consistently doing that. Even once I flew, find the next cheapest flight, go do it again. Because me, I like process, doing it over and over and over, so I feel more comfortable the more I do things.
And that's the way we learn anything. It's by doing it over and over. And tonight, what you're doing is a form of exposure therapy. Some of you have issues getting on the airplane. Anybody out there that's a little claustrophobic or a lot claustrophobic? Yeah. And we conveniently designed them to look like aluminum coffins, right? And that never passes through your mind, but it will now. That's right. Some of you will get better tonight. Some of you will get worse. I can't tell it in the answer, but what were triggers for you, Jeff?
I like being in control. I think that's why I like process form of learning. And on a plane, I have no control.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much sitting there allowing someone else to do everything.
And then you got your arrogant. I think that
made it longer for me.
I think so too. Yeah. It's about control, and it's frustrating because, and I know Eric's the same way. We're never going to let you up in the cockpit, even if it was legal. Yeah. But it is very frustrating because our brain wants to know, to be able to predict things.
Mechanically, I'm not scared of playing, but yeah, more and more just knowing that I had to sit in a certain seat for X amount of hours. I couldn't get off when I wanted. Things like that, and that really did not stop.
And do you ever go to professional football games or baseball games or anything like that?
I do.
Do you sit in the seat for a long period of time there?
It's different. It's one thing. I know. It's much bigger. And it gives me something to watch.
Yeah. It is. And some of the people, I actually try to encourage people to get up and go to the bathroom when you're on the airplane, just for the at least a little bit of release, saying, okay, I can't maybe get off the airplane. And we don't really care if you get off or not. It's just a hell of a lot of paperwork if you do. And you can't get the door open in flight anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, so I tell people that what you have to do is you have to play little mind games with yourself and talk yourself into that. You have to change the way you think about flying. So when you would hear people talk up here, would you have any reactions like Lori would, like, oh yeah,
when kind of what really hit for me is I had a flight to LA, and in the waiting area I was real nervous, and I knew it, so I took a Dramamine. That kind of calmed me down, but then they held the flight longer, so I took another one. Unfortunately, then I had too much Dramamine, which made me nervous. And just as we were cleared for takeoff, I had that panic attack. I got up and headed to the bathroom about the same time they gave fuel to it. And I ended up going right into the back of the thing, head first into it, and passed out.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Yeah. And then called medical emergency, got to LA pretty quickly. First one off, everybody gets to see you. And then some people are very nice, and some people were rude. I heard one person say, oh, so he's the guy, reason we couldn't get drinks. But, for me, I love shit I gotta get.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's how in California faucet like. He's got a reputation to take.
Yeah.
But again, to me, you guys are nervous and concerned of flying. Probably the word for me was, everybody sees me getting off. Sure. But that's okay. just persevere, keep doing it. Distracting myself helps a lot. I put movies on an iPad. You have other strategies, and it made a big difference. And now, I didn't fly for 13 years, and now I've done 6 flights in 6 months. So, just keep doing.
Congratulations. Nicely done. Okay. God, I hate it when it gets so quiet in here. You guys make me nervous. And I even went backwards on the slides. No, we're not going to do that anymore. Okay, so fear flying. It's a life-threatening situation or circumstance. It's the perception of life-threatening. It doesn't have to be life-threatening, okay? Combined with feelings of helplessness. That's also a definition of trauma. In my experience over the 32 years is most of you have some form of traumatic stress or maybe even trauma, PTSD type. It really is that common for people out there. When I do the one-to-one coaching with people, I've had a number of people who have incidents in their life where they were traumatized. But you don't have to have an incident like that. You can have a bad experience on an airplane while you're going through a divorce. How many of you can trace your anxiety to a specific event or a specific time in your life? Okay? And because trauma does layer. And research has shown that you never really get over trauma. You work through it, but you never, it's like peeling back the layers of the onion, which implies that you peel the onion and throw it away. No, it always stays with you. So that's why it's really hard to do that. And it makes such an indelible impression on your psyche. It's really, it's everything that it's cut out to be. The brain does not, the part of the brain, the survival instinct, and and specifically the amygdala. Say amygdala, class. Amygdala. 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 Okay? Now you're going to be neuroscientists. Okay? It's a part of the brain. There are actually 2 of them. They're about as big as an almond. It means almond in Greek. And they're one in either hemisphere, which means it probably is that important because it does keep you from not noticing that something's going on. The trouble is it doesn't distinguish or discriminate between things that seem like they could be frightful or fearful and things that are totally benign. And so that's the problem, is it gets activated. And once it gets activated, the reason why logic doesn't make any difference to you is because it's not a logic problem. It's a biological problem at that point. And when that amygdala gets, and there's a couple other parts of the brain, the hippocampus, and it gets involved. It's very sophisticated, obviously. When it triggers the biology, it starts producing cortisol, which is another name for adrenaline, basically. And it's getting you ready for what it thinks is going to be the end of your life. And it doesn't distinguish between that and like I said, benign circumstances. But once it gets going, now you're off and running, and now it's very difficult without either removing yourself from the threat or removing the threat from you. And so that's why the best time to rehearse and practice and do things to help you get over your fear is before you get to the airport. And that seems counterintuitive to a lot of you because it's like, I don't get nervous when I'm not around that stupid airplane, okay? When I go to my therapist's office, we work on it, and it doesn't, I'm not anxious, okay? So just hang around Eric and I, and we'll scare the bejesus out of you, and we'll get you into that. All right, we had this is a cute little thing. If you've seen this before, so be it. I'm going to show this video here, and there are there are 2 teams. One team has white shirts, one team has black shirts. And in this short, it's less than a half a minute, they're going to pass the ball. Each team has a basketball. So the white t-shirted team is going to pass to the white t-shirts, and the black t-shirted team is going to pass to other black shirted team. And your goal is to count the number of times that the white shirted team passes the ball. Okay? Ready? Go. Who had an answer?
17 and
17 and a half. That's what I get. That's the right answer. Anybody get a different answer? Anybody else notice anything in the video? The gorilla. The gorilla. How many of you, if you saw a gorilla, put your hand up and keep it up. Okay, now just keep it up. Now look at the faces of the other people in the room. Who did not see a gorilla? Okay? Do you believe there was a gorilla? Watch this. Maybe. It's not like it's subtle.
I was too busy counting.
Yeah. So how many of you who saw the gorilla have watched the video before? Okay, quite a number of you. How many of you who have not seen the video before and saw the gorilla were able to count the number of passes? Okay, cool. So you're extra special. That's all, yeah. So what's going on? Focus, yeah. I kind of set you up, the instructions, when I saw this 20 years ago, and I used to teach recurrent pilots a class that they had to take every year, and they're pretty proud of their ability to scan and cross-check and catch things that are out of sync and stuff like that. But I had the biggest class that pilots ever had was 65 pilots, Airbus pilots, and only 5 pilots saw it. And they were like, oh my gosh, they couldn't believe it in there. And so the reason is, when I say count the number of times that the white-shirted team passes, if I had said count the number of times the black-shirted team, you might have been more likely to notice the gorilla coming through there. The point is can you trust your perception? You cannot, especially on an airplane, which can do so many things because we operate in the third dimension, right? Which is part of why some of you get freaked out, because you can't just pull over to the side of the road when you want to, all right? And Lori mentioned the sights, the sounds, and the sensations. I believe sensations are what trigger a lot of you unconsciously. Just the acceleration. What we love, what Eric and I love, is that sense of thrust when you release the brakes and those engines come up. We love that. We would like to be launched with a slingshot to go from 0 to flying speed plus a safety margin in a nanosecond, because that means that we are less vulnerable during that time before that, okay? We have every takeoff is computed. We know how much you weigh. We know the weight of the airplane. We know how much thrust the engines produce and all that. And we have a number. We have a couple numbers, but we have one number for sure called V1 when we take off, and it simplifies the whole process for us. So we know that we can accelerate to that speed. Anything below that, we can stop for whatever reason we want to, and be guaranteed we can stop in the remaining runway, which is important, right? But after that, you wouldn't want to stop, because now you can no longer stop. So now after that, the second thing I know is I'm good to take off in the remaining runway, even if the worst condition possible could happen, and that is I lose all of the thrust of one engine, which rarely happens, okay? Even if I have problems with an engine, oftentimes it's like something called a compressor stall, and it'll be intermittent, and I won't lose all of the thrust. Okay, but that's the whole the thing about takeoff is there's so many sensations: the noise, the vibration, and the acceleration being pushed back in the seat. And when we lift off, I was surprised, even that gentle liftoff that you feel. So just stand up for a minute, okay? And as you stand up, okay, like that, if you had a scale under each of your feet down there, and you weighed 100 pounds. How much would the scale show at the instant that you started to stand up? More or less than 100? Less. Who said less? Okay. It's more, actually. Okay. Because you are moving your center of gravity away from the earth. So just do a slight bend like this, and then just push off like that. Can you feel the pressure on your feet on the floor? Okay, you have your seat. That's what goes on in the airplane. Anytime the airplane moves away from the earth, you weigh slightly more. When those astronauts take off, They put them on their backs so they can have transverse G's rather than G's coming up like you and I are feeling on the airplane, where now my heart is working to push blood from my heart all the way up into the important part, my skull up here. When I was flying high performance airplanes in the military, we actually had G suits that helped us with the G loading and to keep the blood from pooling down there, because you can gray out or black out. When you undo the G's, you come right to and all that, so it's not a deal. So that's the first time, is when you get pushed back in the seat, that's transverse G's, but then when we lift off the runway, you feel yourself being, the earth doesn't want to let go of you, all right? And when it's up there, that's what you all are afraid of. You'll plummet if everything quits and goes south on you, but you don't plummet. That's our favorite word, right? Yeah.
Yes, the class people love to plummet.
Yeah. And when you see the news, the reporters, they're trying to get your attention on their story, and so when there's any turbulence, they're going to find the people who were freaked out the most in that, and they're going to interview them, and they're going to say, I was crying, everybody was crying, and we were going to die. Sure, that's what you would do if you thought you were going to die, but the problem is you were never going to die. It's just a scary moment because you didn't know what's going on in the story you were telling. So you can't trust your perception. And I've got some other things that we'll talk about. That's a book he wrote, The Invisible Gorilla. Thinking. It's a thinking problem. It's really an attention problem, right? Because when you get triggered by whatever it is about flying that grabs your attention, it hijacks your attention, and now it won't let go of it. And what does it talk to you at? There's a little voice that talks. What does that little voice say to you? Who wants to share some of the things that little voice says? Yeah, I know you talk to yourself. You're out there right now saying, I don't think I talk to myself, do I? I don't think I do.
I am so mean to myself. I say the worst things.
What's that?
I said I'm so mean to myself.
Yeah, stop it. Stop it. A lot of you are mean to yourselves. Lori was mean to herself. You got to lighten up a little bit. You know, it's just a situation. It's a circumstance that you didn't certainly invite into your being. And it's really one of the most successfully treated phobias there are, fear of flying. The hard part is it doesn't allow baby steps past a certain point, right? It's baby step, baby step, baby step, baby step, quantum leap, baby step, okay? But if the airlines would let us, we'd go out here tonight, we'd sit in the airplane, we'd start the engines up, Eric could taxi us around the airport, we'd come back. We do that for 30 days. By the end of 30 days, what would you be saying? Enough with the taxi. Let's do something else. And then we just lift off and touch down and come back. Lift off and touch down, do that for a month. And then at the end of that month, it's, come on, I'm a big girl, I'm a big boy now, I think I can handle it. And then you'd finally be to the point. Unfortunately, that would be prohibitively expensive and the airlines wouldn't do it, okay? So the only exposure we can do is like doing this or using the harmonizer, because I have some other videos in there that you can look at the video. I've got captioning on it, tell you what's going on, giving you some alternative self-talk that you can process, some music in the background, and looking out one of the cabin windows on a 737 just to see what it's like. And so if you do get freaked out by takeoff, you can just rehearse that over and over again. It runs about 7 minutes and it takes you all the way up to the climb and to the point 8 where you hear one of the dings. How many of you don't like the dings? What are the dings? What's the story you tell yourself on the dings? If 3, it's over. So she's been doing some homework there. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's over. It's never over till it's over. But we use those mostly to talk to the flight attendants when they're away from the stations where the interphones are. Okay. Let me see what we're going to do here. We're going to move this up a little bit. I want to do. I'm going to skip ahead to this, okay? There's a couple things about thinking that I want to talk to you about. One of them is that the way we are wired as human beings actually lends itself to believing some of the stories that you make up about flying, okay? We have not 2 brains, but 2 systems for the way we think and make decisions. One is called System 1, and these are some characteristics. It's intuition and instinct. It's the things you know without knowing. If I say to you, how much is 2 and 2, you say. If I say to you, how much is 24 times 17, you say, yeah, you don't say anything, right? We just used those 2 different systems. There was a time in your life where you didn't know how to add 2 and 2, and you had to learn the process. And that was done in system 2, which is the logic, the slower one, the rational one. And it only does about 5% of the mental transactions every day for you. This one does 95. And when you think about it, if we didn't have something that processed that fast, it'd take us an hour to get across the room, because every step I took, I would have to make sure that my center of gravity and my balance is all cool before I lift one leg up and put it down in front of the other. So that's the way we're naturally oriented. When you look at the political process out there today, both sides, you see a lot of what we call elephant brain, as opposed to rider here, and you may see that we got a little elephant there. Not an elephant because he has a good memory, which is traditional. An elephant because he is so forceful and he's confident that he's right, even when he's not right. Anybody got a relative that always uses hyperboles and exaggeration and this and and like I said, politics is great for this. Okay, that's the ultimate in this part of the brain, or this process over there. And what it does is it leads you to not get the full story, because this is where you do a deep dive to be really informed about what you're about to believe. So pat yourselves on the back tonight for coming to the class, because one of the things that helps do that is to stay over here. It's slower, but it's where you get information. And that's the thing you want to do, whether it's come to a class like this, or whether it's watch the Facebook shows that we have every week, or one-to-one coaching. There's a lot of resources out there, but you don't want to run around with some of the myths that you have about flying, because this fellow over here, he will take off and run with those things. Okay, so that's one process, how we think. And the fellow that actually I stole this material from is called Daniel Kahneman. Well, here, this is a fun thing here, okay? We'll do another demonstration. A bat cost $1. It costs $1 more than the ball. Together, they cost $1.10. How much does the ball cost?
10 cents.
10 cents. How many got 10 cents? Thanks for playing. All right. So when you go through this a little bit slower here, if you say the ball costs 10 cents, you're wrong. If the bat costs $1 more than the ball and the ball costs a dime, then together they'd be $1.20. All right? So the ball can only be a nickel if you do the math there. All right? So again, I got it. That's the same thing that where 2 and 2 came from. Only 2 and 2 you happen to have a lot more confidence in, and you know that. That's why you weren't willing to stick your neck out when I said how much is 24 times 17. But that's why we are so ready to believe a lot of the myths that we got. Not that anybody's trying to sell you a bill of goods. It's just that you're looking for information, and you trust yourself. And some of you trusted yourself when you said, I don't know why, but flying cannot be safe. And so now we're going to explore some of the reasons why flying isn't safe there, because we're going to skip forward. By the way, the brain is a belief engine. That's what it does. Question? Oh, okay. The brain, we evolved so that we could first save our own lives. So the most primitive part of the brain, which is what's garnering your attention, is the survival instinct. That was the first part of a human being's brain that evolved. Then we got into a little bit higher level, and then the last part was this pound and a third up here called the cerebral cortex, the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain that was designed to override the limbic part of the system, the limbic system, and tell us, no, it's not really a threat. You do that. But literally, it has less circuitry going from this part to the primitive, to those two little almond-shaped parts back there, and because that was first and primary, so all the stuff comes from that much more readily than it goes into that, and that's why you can't stop many times, at least in the stages of your fear of flying. Once you get going, the ball just starts to roll, and you can't get out of that. Okay, so we were designed to do that, and our ancestors, I call them Rudy and Eugene. Rudy and Eugene are out on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they hear rustling in the grass over there, and Rudy says, it's probably just the wind. Eugene says, I don't have a good feeling. I saw saber-toothed tiger go in there the other day. And so Eugene cuts a wide swath around it, and Rudy keeps going straight ahead. Rudy gets eaten. He gets taken out of our gene pool, right? But Eugene's got the worry gene. So he passed that on to all of us, and that's what you have and I have, but some of our worry genes are more active than others. And that's right. So we've got all the hardware, all the software that Rudy and Eugene had, or at least Eugene had, but we don't have any of the threats anymore. That's why you see crazy things in the news, like freeway shootings and people that rage and lose control, because that part of the brain just takes off and it has a mind of its own, literally. Okay? So let me go through and skip forward. We want to talk about triggers. Well, a little bit about control here. Control. How many of you feel out of control in an airplane? Okay? And that's pretty much a bottom line issue for most people who are afraid to fly, is that you just don't feel like you can intercede on your own behalf. Again, and that's natural, right? We want that. And ironically, Eugene, when he got through all those things by being extra cautious, he noticed patterns, and that's where our brains were designed. They're to find patterns in the environment. We can use them to our advantage when we can predict the future. And that's why a lot of you had a bad experience on an airplane and you said, not going to do that again. Okay? Goes back to that elephant brain. It just takes it on, and that's all I need to know. I'm not ever doing that again. Okay? So our brain is designed to find patterns in the environment, and then it predicts that. How many of you have anticipatory anxiety? I mean, that's all it is with fear of flying. It's worrying about something that's never going to happen. Okay? And that is that same ability to predict the future, which our ancestors willed to us, but now it's working against you. So the way you have to do that, again, is to educate yourself, and that deals with that. There are two pathways to anxiety in the brain. One is that, let me see if I can find that here. Come on. Oh, just had it. I'm short-circuiting about an hour of my pitch here because I talked too long. Oh, no, don't do that. I don't talk to myself, do you think? All right, doesn't matter. We got the amygdala and this part up here. There's two pathways. You can think your way into anxiety. That makes sense. How many of you have something that you think the wing's going to fall off, something like that, more of a mechanical, okay? You want to share it with us? Yeah, just one. Just give us one theory. It's a trigger. We're going to talk about that, okay?
Sure. I always assume mid-flight the plane's going to snap in half and we're just going down.
Okay, that's a nice, pleasant thought. Yeah, all right. So that's more mechanical, and that starts up here in the cortex, and it goes back to the amygdala, and you just start ruminating about it, and it just grows and probably has a life of its own and brings in some other stories with it alongside, okay? That's, I'm going to say, it's not super easy, but it's a little bit easier to handle people who are primarily have cortex triggers like that than people who have amygdala triggers, and that's the part that does it automatically. The amygdala gets all excited on its own. It has an autopilot, if you will. If I'm walking down the aisle here or something like that, and somebody threw a piece of garden hose out there and it hit my peripheral vision just where I couldn't tell it was a garden hose right away, I would jump thinking it's a snake. We are naturally wired to fear snakes. We're wired to fear falling, which is probably why everybody out there has some element of worry about and concern about turbulence, because turbulence is up and down drafts. So it's the down part that probably bothers most of you rather than the updraft, okay? And it's because we are naturally afraid to fall. And then some of you take it to another level and say, I won't get on a ladder and I won't do a lot of things. Jim White, one of our good friends, was a pilot, and he's 6'4" to start with. He was terrified of heights. And we used to laugh at him all the time, you know, because he flies airplanes, you know. But to him, if he could stomp on the floor of the airplane, then he was not in the air, you know, or wasn't a victim of that. So, okay. All right, so let's talk about triggers real quick here. Triggers are, are those sheets here somewhere? Yeah, let's pass those out, okay? We got a thing that we've accumulated over the year, triggers that people have reported, and feel free to add your own to that. What we're going to do is have everybody take one of these, and we're going to do a little activity here real quick. And then we're going to take that with us to the airplane, and we're going to spend the rest of the night. We're going to talk more about airplane stuff on the airplane, okay? We just like to do a little bit of the brain stuff here before we get going. The class, the 101 class is something I've done. I always wanted to do some part of giving back to the community that's been so good to me throughout my life. And so that's why we do these free classes here. And it's designed to give you your first whetting of your appetite as to what do I need to do to really get over this, okay? And we've got it kind of tiered the way that I have evolved over the years. So tonight is just the first step to get an idea. What are some of the issues that you're faced with? Can I identify with them? And what can I do? And we try to do this in a escalating way. Lori's testimony there was one at the lower end. All she needed was to come here, listen, get some confidence, get the harmonizer, and then she went on about her merry way. Okay. Some of you, that may not be enough. You may want to do some coaching with me. You may want to, take longer, like Jeff did. Come back to the classes. Come back as often as you want. There's no prohibition for you coming back here, and do that. And then I do have people around the world. I do a lot of the coaching I do is phone coaching, as you can imagine, because I've got clients in Australia, for example. They don't think that they should get on an airplane to come over here to go to a class to get them over there for flying for some reason, but I don't know, sounds strange to me, and they're a lot of fun. And now with the Wi-Fi on board, I can talk to people while they're in the air. I had about 3 months ago, I had a young lady who we'd done some coaching, and she got to London from LA and she couldn't get back. It was the morning of the trip. She was freaking out. She didn't want to get on, so she surprised me. She actually did get on the airplane. And then for the 7.5-hour flight from London back to New York, we were texting. And I'll just tell you one of the things, it's fun to do because I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what can I do to get her attention off of where it is? Because you can tell she's just really tense. Well, with an iPhone, I don't know if you can do it with Androids, but with an iPhone, you can do audio texting. And of course, I'm sitting there at my computer, so I can type faster than she can anyway, which is good. But then I thought, I said, have you got your earbuds with you, Shannon? And she said, yeah. I said, put them on. So now I start talking to her and I start playing a game. I said, okay, I'm going to give you a number and you're going to add 3 to it. So here's the way you play. 7, I say 6, you say 9. I say 5, you say 8. I say 9, when you add 3, it can't go over 10, so you got to add 3 with 12, but then you drop the 1 and now it's a 2. All right? So what am I doing? I'm going from her elephant brain to her other brain, right? Or to that other process, right? And she's just getting sucked right in. She's sitting there. I can hear her wheels turning, right? And then pretty soon we're in the middle of this, and I noticed that she's not giving me all the frenetic stuff she was to start with. So I said, okay, now what I want you to do, I want you to reach around your head with your right hand. I want you to reach around here. I want you to grab the lobe of your left ear with your right hand like that. And I could tell she was doing it. And I said, now, do you feel stupid or what? So, and that was it. She starts laughing, and that was it. The rest of the time, she fell asleep and came back to New York. It's just, I don't know. You guys are the ones that taught me this stuff over the last 32 years. Seriously. I mean, I ended up getting a master's in counseling, but it's really talking to you people and my own fears. I've had panic attacks. I've had a couple of panic attacks in my life. I am a PTSD survivor from childhood sexual abuse. I didn't know that till I was well into my adulthood and all that. But all those things have become resources for me. And the stories I tell myself about them are different now. All right, so triggers. What are triggers? What is a trigger? What's a trigger on a gun do? Yeah, start. It could be a starter pistol. It makes something happen, okay? It makes you take action. So that's what triggers do to you but they happen in positive and negative. But it's something that you do that or something about that when you process that information, it starts a negative thought process about that. So what I want you to do is I want you to take just a minute and I want you to go through and just check or circle whatever you want, triggers that might be relevant for you down there, okay? And if you got some of your own, if you can manage to write them in there, write a couple of them down. So take a minute and come up with those. So we're at 7:20. We'll do this. We'll do a little bit on turbulence.
It's gonna take me a long time to get.
Yeah.
I warned the TSA people, but it's
Okay.
gonna take a long time to
Okay.
get everybody through.
Okay.
So,
You know what? I'll show them a couple of the slides on the turbulence. And you did talk about that, so that's helpful. And then,
I just tell them when it happens.
yeah. And then, okay. Now what I want you to do is around you, find a group of 3 or 4 people. Turn around, down the aisle, whatever there. And I just want you to each share with the other person. A big part of this is thinking that you're the only one and you're the worst one. And I have people all the time say, oh my God, I'm the worst, Captain Ron, you'll never. And I tell them, you're not even close, okay? So share with the other people and then we'll talk about it publicly a little bit.
One thing Dieter said, when you take the microphone off and like hold it, it sounds really bad. I guess you're
Scratching.
Yeah. So he said to tell you not to do that anymore.
Yeah, Sue came up there. So hopefully it's better now.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Can you tell me later about one-on-one class or something like that?
oh yeah, you mean, yeah,
Coaching?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. What a civilized way to get everybody's attention. Okay, all right. So triggers. So what are some of the triggers? Somebody give me one. I don't like it when cabin door closes. And what's the story that you come up with when the cabin door closes? It feels very claustrophobic. And what's the story that that comes into mind when you feel claustrophobic?
It just feels like the walls are closing in.
Okay.
You can't get off.
Okay, but are they closing in? Have you ever known anybody to die in the cabin of an airplane when the door is closed? No, right. Yeah, but again, it's not logical. It's that part of your brain that says, I don't care what the logic is. I don't care whatever. I just don't like it. Okay? Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? How many of you don't like it when they close the door? I tried it once. It is so windy at 35,000 feet. No, you can't do that. What's another one? Somebody give me another one. Turbulence. And what's the story that you tell yourself about turbulence? And some of you don't even know that there's a story going on, right? Because the feelings get so overwhelmed that you can't even think straight, because cortisol, it does two things. One, it gets you ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And the other thing is it clouds your thinking, so you don't even think as clearly, okay? So, and there's this natural thing I think that people go through where they equate, they make equivalence between how badly I feel right now. Certainly I must be in jeopardy, right? Especially if it is due to a sight, sound, or sensation on the airplane. If you're feeling motion in turbulence, it makes perfect sense to me why you would equate the ugly feelings that you have with a sense of doom, okay? And the only way through that is, there are two paths, right? One is to educate yourself why turbulence is never a threat to the safety of an airplane, at least the structural integrity. You could have pilots who have made mistakes in the past, not knowing as much as they did way back in the mid-'80s, like we do now, and we've done a lot of things in the meantime to rectify this. But generally speaking, turbulence is not a threat. It's just annoying as hell. Yeah.
What about when it's not so much you know that it's not a threat? I mean.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's that feeling. For some reason, it triggers in me the feeling of the airplane.
Yeah.
And then that's a horrible feeling to have, where you feel like you can't get off the roller coaster.
Right. Right.
Is there anything that you can? Is that something that you can? I mean, because that's more than just thinking about it or trying to convince yourself out of it. It's an actual physiological.
Yeah. And that's where some kind of a mindful meditation practice starts, okay? You literally, and the flight harmonizer, which is part of the Fearless Flight Kit, that was designed to do that. It was designed to talk to you when the only voice that was talking to you was the one that was crazy in there, telling you how miserable you felt and how this has got to stop, okay? And so that's the short answer. I coach with people, and many of the fears that trouble people with phobias, in particular fear of flying, are rooted in attachment disorders. You know, for some reason you didn't have the needs met when you came out of the womb in the first 3 years of your life. That's a very critical time for brain development. And we have a couple of young people in here tonight. I wanted to say one thing about that. When you have young children like this, below the age of certainly 16 or 18, you know, especially when they're below 15, you have parts of the brain that's not fully developed. So it's a different story for a child, because they don't have the same resources. That's why not catastrophic, but chaotic growing up in families that are in chaos and stuff and are not predictable is very traumatic for children. It's worse than combat, because they can't predict. They don't have a sense of safety. But you and I, ideally, if you had an intact family, or at least a mom who held you, that when you first came out of the womb, you knew how to cry, because that's built in. Mother Nature said, we got to give them a way to let people know when they're in pain. So that one we knew. But down-regulating your level of arousal, which is what it's called, that has to be learned. And that's what you get when somebody touches you, caresses you, talks to you, and makes eye contact with you. Never have we been so confident and so informed how critical the early part of life is for a child. If you don't get those things, you may have remembered what 15, 20 years ago now, there was a whole, when the Romania was under communist control, and they had all these children they pulled from their parents, they put them in orphanages, and they had all of their basic needs met in terms of food and shelter and things like that, but they did not get human touch. And it came to light when a lot of those children were adopted by U.S. families, and they had just lifelong problems adjusting because they did not get any human contact. They did not get any of the eye contact. They didn't get any of the touching and the caressing. So, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question on the turbulence?
Yeah.
At the beginning, you showed the map where the pilots can see the turbulence.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think it was last month on a flight to Nashville.
Yeah.
Where the passengers got off and the turbulence was so bad that they were hitting the roof, taken to hospital. Why didn't the pilots see that?
Yeah.
That bad?
And why would you remember that? You know how many flights, commercial flights there are in the world every day? Commercial airliners, about 105,000. You won't see tomorrow in the news, oh my God, 105,000 airplanes took off and landed and nothing happened. Okay? Why? One of the reasons is because it is so unique. Flying is the safest way to travel on the planet. There isn't anything better. Walking kills 7,000 people every year in the US. Falling out of bed, 400. Sometimes as high as 800. Fatal falling out of a bed. I'll bet none of you go to bed tonight thinking, oh my God, this could be the last night. Okay? Yeah. You will now. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. That's why I say some will get better, some will get worse, you know? Yeah. The answer to the question is,
What was the question now?
yeah, what was the question? He wants to know, how come those idiot pilots couldn't see that?
Was there thunderstorms in the area? Were you there?
They didn't say. They just said it was such severe turbulence. And I'm like, well, if it's that severe, why could the pilots not know so that they could avoid that?
There are microbursts, wake turbulence areas in and around thunderstorm areas that people occasionally fly into, intending it to be a better ride, or they are surprised by it, and that sort of thing happens, but it's extremely rare. Extremely rare. And if they would have known about it, A, they wouldn't have gone there, and B, they would have had everybody seatbelted down very, very tight. So I suspected it was some kind of weather anomaly or something like that, but it's quite infrequent.
But the plane did land safe.
And they landed
Yeah.
safely.
And who got hurt? Just take a guess.
Flight attendants.
And why would they get hurt?
Because they're walking around.
Because they're walking around. So Diane could tell you all about that. Yeah. So the way you get hurt on an airplane is to not be fastened in. Now that doesn't mean that you have a bunch of cavalier passengers on that. However, you'll have a lot of flights where the crew will turn on the seatbelt sign, and you're supposed to, unless you have a reason to get up, and it should be a really good reason. And go in the bathroom, maybe you got to do it, maybe you don't. But you'll have a lot of business people, frequent travelers and stuff. They've seen that come on and go off so many times and nothing ever happened. So you get complacent. That's what the biggest that's the biggest challenge to pilots these days and age. Airplanes are so damn safe now, nothing happens. So you get sucked into a lull, and then something surprises you. Okay. And again, technology is the main reason why nothing happens, because it's really good. But back to the problem. So people get trapped out of their seats, and you can, okay? You can go up and puncture the plastic liner in the ceiling, and you can come down on the seat back. You can have a cart, if you're a flight attendant, come down on your feet, and those things weigh 200 pounds, plus the downward force due to gravity can be even more. That's how people get hurt. Okay, and again, I kind of joked at the beginning of this evening, what's going to happen is the media is going to be there because it's a great story, and they're going to interview the people who are the most freaked out about it. Okay, and I don't want to minimize anybody that got hurt or anything like that, but if you fly, keep yourself in your seat with your seatbelt fastened as much as possible. And I like to tell people, especially if you're anxious about turbulence and you're feeling the heebie-jeebies bubble up and down inside of you, the butterflies and all that, just tighten your seatbelt another notch. Make yourself really feel secure. Put some real positive things so that you are one with the airplane, okay? One with the airplane. So this is what causes all turbulence. It's wind from one direction bumps into wind from another direction. They don't have to be 180, they can be like this. It's like, have any of you ever whitewater rafted? Probably not the biggest group to whitewater raft, okay? You've at least seen it on TV or in the movies, okay? Yeah, okay. And you go down there and the river's down. What's causing all the rapids? What is that? What's
Wind.
well, kind of equivalent. Current. It's the water, and it's all going the same direction, but not all at the same time, right? It hits rocks, it hits the side of the river, and it runs into each other. That's what happens here. So turbulence is just where two different wind streams are running into each other. That isn't a problem. The problem is Mr. Arrogant here thinks he should take his airplane through that at 500 miles an hour. I'm joking, of course. That's why we want to fly, because you get there in a hurry, okay? And we can't see it. That's the problem. You can see whitewater on a river. You can't see that up there. You can get some indications. Clear air turbulence is not all perfectly clear. Sometimes you get these little ice crystal clouds up there, and that gives us some indication. But generally speaking, clear air turbulence is the one that traps people a lot. And it can be just one hellacious boom, and that's it. And that's how people get off guard. Because believe me, the last thing I ever wanted to do was hurt anybody on one of my flights. So you got to be careful.
It's not quite completely sold. I mean, you
yeah,
you get your foot in the door, but it's not completely sold.
yeah. And you won't be until you quit telling yourself that I can do anything, but I can't do that, or whatever the story is. So tonight is about trying to help you get started, identify that it is not a problem of logic. It's a problem of educating yourself about what flying is all about. You don't have to know as much as Eric and I do about flying, but you should be able to, when something confronts you, in aviation, and if you stick with us and do coaching, or if you stick with us and do the webinars and stuff that we do, and you learn more about it, you may not remember the details, but you could say, you know what, I don't remember all of it, but I remember Ron talking about that something, and when I listened to him when he explained it, I was good with that. Does that make sense? Because that's how all you do with other things in the world that you're trying to make an informed decision, is you try to do as best you can, and always never run around with questions. Text me or email me. I got Eric available here, and we'll always get back to you with questions. Okay? Yeah.
So when you fly into Sky Harbor, summertime especially, the plane's bumping, it's going all over, the wings are going like this, but when you're driving on the 101 or 202, it looks like the plane's just gliding along. How much are they actually bumping?
Yeah.
It's like 3 feet, 2 feet, 5 feet? What is it?
Very good question.
On average, right? How much? Inches, that's it. But it's
Yeah,
like
6 inches would be a bunch. The worst drop you've ever had probably didn't drop more than 6 inches. But it didn't just drop as if I took a pen or a pencil or something like that and just drop it like that. Okay, it didn't drop just like that. It was aerodynamically thrust down, and then it hit an updraft, and it was thrown back up like that. Okay, and that's why it's 6 inches. So then you say, how can somebody get thrown 3 feet into the roof? Yeah, it is, because there's that guy not having his seatbelt on, and watch this. Okay, it didn't have to move more than an inch, and it threw that up 6 times the distance. Right? That's how people get hurt. It's the momentum that carried him up into the ceiling. Okay.
You know where the 143 is, the Hohokam Expressway? So in the summer, we call it the Hohokam Shuffle. We know that 500 feet above the ground, we're going to get a down roll and an updraft right on short final, right there, every time. And we just refer to it.
Because you're going to slam down, it's going to be smooth. You don't know.
Yeah, it's every time. Every time in the summer when there's differential heating of the ground, asphalt, dirt, water, with the columns there going up and down faster. We know that we go through that, and right there by the Hohokam, by the river, we know that we're going to get bashed up and down once or twice. And what he's talking about, the rocks and the rapids, same thing. Denver's right on the downhill side of the Rockies. The Western Flow comes over there. I say it's a city ordinance that they require turbulence, which is true.
It is the worst. Yeah.
And when you go to Denver, you wonder how low you're going to go before you start to get hammered, because you're going to get hammered every single time to some degree, and it's just positioning with the air moving coming down over the rocks. And when he's talking about the bumps and bashing the cap there, the fin, think about it when you've been on a boat on an almost calm lake. Just little teeny ripples of mirror glass, but you're with your brothers, cousins, friends. Look at this new 200 horse motor I have. 60 knots across there, you just hit those little teeny ripples, but those are hard hits in the hull of the boat.
Yep.
And they don't tip it over, and it's the same thing in the airplane. It won't tip over. Oh, and I have one, I heard a female voice, so I didn't turn around and see it. Save some of the triggers, we'll answer everything we can in the airplane, but who said they were worried about flying along and the airplane fuselage splits in half and they plummet and die? Because
There
that's
she is,
awesome.
yeah.
Now is it, and I'll tell you right now, I hate when that happens. and you were an automatic winner at Starbucks. That's an automatic winner for, that's just the bomb.
Yay! All right, we can talk a lot, but we want to get through this. Diane's got special pull and dispensation to get us through security all together here, and it takes a while. We're going to regroup up at D2 at 8 o'clock. Okay, we're going to have an hour in the airplane, and I want you to bring those and kind of keep them handy, if you would, because we're going to spend the rest of the time, and we're going to kind of take the flow of a flight to make you feel like you got that. And you may find, pardon me. And you may get an email that talks about other things. I don't like to waste my time marketing to you or something. But if you want to continue and do other things, the things that I recommend, if you never ever take advantage of this, I think you're really silly if you have a serious fear of flying. And that is, you can schedule a free 15-minute coaching call with me, okay? And a lot of people, that's how they get started, okay? And we'll just talk about whatever you think is most important to you and give you some ideas on where to go from that. Probably the best thing that we have is the Fearless Flight Kit, and you'll get a link to that, and that's something that you can go on. There's a sample on that, and you can read more about it. Any of this stuff you can ask me and contact me. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, we have coming up on November 9th. November 9th, we have our next Clear for Takeoff 201 class and 301 class. And that's what we'll do is we'll go to a hotel for a half day. We start at about 8 o'clock in the morning, go to just after noon. And then for those adventuresome folks out there who purchased a Southwest Airlines ticket, we're going to fly from Phoenix to somewhere, probably Vegas or Burbank or someplace like that. You'll know when you register. And that's the most successful and the most fun. Oftentimes, Jeff's done that, okay? If you want to get a jump start on getting over your fear, that's the way to do it. By the time we get into the air, people are done. Oh, we got our star here. Chris in the back here who has helped me for so many years. Used to be terrified to fly from the time he was about 7 years old, and he just left and went to college, and he came back for the weekend, and he came down to help us shoot this again. But anyway, Chris, 3.5 years ago, 4 years in February? Yeah. I got the cutest video of him sitting next to me, and he's just freaked out on takeoff, and the question he wanted to know is, how long does it take to get in the air? Because a lot of you, as much as you don't want to get in an airplane, then when we get you in the airplane, now it's, let's keep this thing moving. Because now if we stuck on the tarmac for an hour. And then I read the reports or have buddies like Eric out there flying, they had a 10-minute hold waiting to get off the ground. No. Anyway, but that's what Chris said. So I said 30 to 50 seconds. Doesn't matter, big airplane, little airplane. Takeoff roll is going to be between 30 and 50 seconds. That's it. And so that was it. We get airborne, and it's real cute. He says, oh, yeah, listen to this guy. This is okay. And that was the end of it. And you've flown how many times now?
Like 55, I think.
55 times. So somebody's bankrolling that kid. That's what I need to know. Yeah. But anyway, but you can get over this. It's really, and you really raise your right hand, bend it like this, pat yourself on the back, and say, "Way to go," because there'll be 60 million people at any one time in the U.S. I figure that are afraid to fly on this level, and you won't see 10% of them ever get over it. That's too bad because it really is something that you can get over. You don't need to limit your life like this. And once you get past it, you'll look at it in your rearview mirror, and some of you may not fly enough to where you get super, super comfortable, but you won't be in a death grip with the arm rest next to you or your partner's arm. Okay? All right. So Diana's going